Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Hey, we're almost done. You can go back to your regularly scheduled life now of not watching our show, because as soon as this is over, I'm going to say goodbye, and you're free to be social and live your lives like human beings. And again, go to texasbeefhouse.com or bitonbeef.com. Make sure you use promo code 365sports. We heard a lot about Project Rudy this week and the proposed Super League from 3 former Disney executives and former Notre Dame AD Jack Swarbrick. They're working on keeping 70 Power 4 teams together in a league that has financial relegation to it and all that. But I'm going to give you my top 5 Project Rudy questions, starting right now with number 5. What does the G5 think about this? Even though it may not matter what they think, because these schools are going to break away regardless, there's got to be some politicking and there's got to be some setup for them in their own league and their own playoff. So can there be enough political support for 2 separate leagues within Division I of college football, or the FBS level of college football right now? Can that happen, and can it happen smoothly? That I wonder about. I think this is ultimately a minor bump in the road if they wanted to do this. There are much more major bumps in the road, but even still, the G5 schools are going to try to have their say in all of it because they've got to protect their own interests as well, and a breakaway is not necessarily good news for them. Number 4, how do the other 2 feel about it? I'll just name the Sklar brothers here, ACC and Big 12. I'm sure that they have a lot of presidents that would be on board for something like this, especially to keep pace in an overall revenue shared model with the other 2 leagues. But how do they feel about it, and how passionately do they feel about it when it comes to making a super league? Is this something that they'd really want to push, or would they rather it stay more status quo because that benefits them? They can control that a little bit more. I don't know. I would assume that they'd be more for something like this, but again, you're talking about, 33, 34 other schools. They're going to be making this decision to jump into a super conference. There's probably not consensus among them, and how do they get there is a huge, huge question. Number 3, are the numbers real? A $9 billion cash infusion, $3.5 billion up front to help buy out the schedules and reshuffle the deck, so to speak. But private equity is always going to come in and say, like, hey, we've got this much money, here's how much infusion. Are those numbers real? Is it something that they have on hand, that they can raise, that the TV networks are fine with? Is all that real? Now, I don't think that this group is coming up and saying they've got $9 billion when they don't, because you have to deliver on those things. But is it real enough to the TV networks? Are they okay with this plan? How does that all work with it? Well, because they will be showered with some money, and especially those other 2 I just talked about, a lot of those schools would be first in line to say, yes, we would love a piece of that $3.5 billion when it comes to making us whole again, house settlement, and all that. Number 2, is there a consensus for what the future is? I don't know. That's my biggest question about the leaders of college football. What do they want it to be? I think the biggest problem is you have a lot of leaders of college football who want it to be what it was. Well, they've got to get out of that mode because it's never going to be what it was again. So what do you want it to be? What can you make it? Where can it go that benefits the maximum amount of people? And we know that that's not necessarily shared among everybody. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, 70 to be exact, when it comes to institutions and deciding what they want the future to be when it comes to Project Rudy, if that were even a thing that could happen. And I really don't think that it's going to, because of what our number 1 reason is going to be. Number 1, can you convince the Power 2, still represented here by Monty Burns and mostly Greg Sankey? I think Tony Petitti has enough presence in his league that will want this to happen, because there is a theoretical day in the future, which I don't think is that far-fetched, where Ohio State says, we need to be getting more money than Rutgers, or Alabama says, we need to be getting more money than South Carolina. Those things are real possibilities, given the fact that it's me first, me first, me first in athletics now. So can you convince the Power 2 that not only is it not going to be me first, me first, me first, that there's other schools that you're going to be taking along with you that now fall into the South Carolinas or the Vanderbilts or the Northwesterns of the world that don't make as much money for the conference as the big boys do. That is the biggest sell. That's exactly what Greg Sankey said he didn't want to do, is he didn't want anybody else to draft off of the SEC. So how do you convince Greg Sankey? How do you back him into a corner and convince him that for the good of college sports that this needs to happen? I don't know if you can. He's pretty well set in his ways, and he's pretty much told us what the goal is. So the only way that this happens is if Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey get on board with a plan, which they might just take the framework from this, leave private equity out of it, and do it themselves. Who knows? But these are all questions that we have to ask when it comes to Project Rudy. That is the top 5, and now it's the weekend. Adios.